Right now, while you watch this video, thousands of people are having their kidneys destroyed, and they feel absolutely nothing. No pain, no warning, no sign. I need you to understand that before we go any further, because what I'm about to show you changed the way I practice medicine. I've been a physician for over 20 years. I followed hundreds of patients in private practice and in public health units, and I can tell you with every ounce of authority I've built over that time. Chronic kidney disease is the most underestimated silent epidemic in modern medicine, and it begins long before any symptom ever appears. What truly disturbed me, what made me record this video today, wasn't the most severe case I've ever treated. It was the most common one. It was a 48-year-old man, a high school teacher from Ohio, no relevant family history, no specific complaints, who came into my office because he felt more tired than he thought he should. I ran a routine panel. Creatinine elevated. Glomerular filtration rate compromised. His kidneys were functioning at 60% capacity. He went pale in the chair. He said he didn't understand how that was possible. After all, he felt nothing different. And that was exactly what hit me. He felt nothing, and he was on a direct path to hemodialysis. That is not the exception. That is the rule. The National Kidney Foundation estimates that over 37 million Americans are living with some degree of chronic kidney disease, and the vast majority have no idea. Not because the tests are hard to run, but because nobody told them it was necessary. Because nobody explained that what sits on the breakfast table, at lunch, at dinner, on the shelf of the nearest pharmacy, that it could be silently destroying their kidneys, day after day, for years. That is what I'm here to talk about, and I need you to pay close attention from beginning to end. The kidneys are two organs roughly the size of a closed fist, positioned in the back of the abdomen, one on each side of the spine. They do something extraordinary. They filter your entire blood supply approximately 250 times every single day. 250 times. Your entire circulation passes through them continuously, being purified, cleaned, regulated. They eliminate toxins, control the balance of water and salt, regulate blood pressure, activate vitamin D, and produce hormones essential for red blood cell production. They are, in practical terms, the most sophisticated filtration system ever developed by biology. And they do all of this without ever complaining. That is precisely the trap. The kidneys have an extraordinary capacity for compensation. When part of the renal tissue begins to be damaged, the remaining nephrons, the functional units of the kidney, work harder to compensate for the loss. The body adapts. Function continues. The patient feels nothing, and while this happens, the damage accumulates. Silent microlesions adding up year after year, until one day, compensation is no longer possible, and the collapse arrives all at once, often irreversible. Physicians call this process gradual loss of renal function. I prefer to call it the slow betrayal of your own body, because that is exactly what it feels like to the patient when they find out. A betrayal that was happening while they slept, while they worked, while they ate, while they lived. Now, I need to tell you something that is going to be uncomfortable, something most people don't want to hear. The primary aggressor of the kidneys is not a rare disease. It is not an industrial chemical. It is not something you would need to actively seek out. It's in your refrigerator. It's in your kitchen cabinet. It's in the package you open every day without thinking twice. It's in the pill you take when your head pounds or your knee aches, and it acts in silence. A slow poison that doesn't warn you. One you take voluntarily because nobody ever told you it was dangerous in the amounts you consume. Let me start with the most present, the most underestimated. Salt. Sodium is an essential mineral. Nobody disputes that. The problem is not the existence of sodium in the diet. The problem is the absurd quantity in which it exists in modern food. The World Health Organization recommends a maximum intake of 2 grams of sodium per day, roughly 5 grams of table salt. Consistent population studies show that the average American consumes 2 to 3 times that amount. And most of that excess doesn't come from the salt shaker on the table. It comes from places most people never associate with salt: sandwich bread, deli meats, processed cheeses, bouillon cubes, canned soups, ready-made sauces, instant noodles, crackers, and sodas with sodium added as a preservative. Excess sodium increases the pressure inside the renal blood vessels. The kidneys are forced to work under chronically elevated pressure. Over time, that sustained high pressure damages the glomerular capillaries, the tiny vessels responsible for filtration. It's like forcing a garden hose to function permanently at the pressure of a fire pump. It holds, until the damage becomes permanent. The second major culprit is sugar. Chronic excessive consumption leads to type 2 diabetes. And the impact of diabetes on the kidneys is devastating. When blood glucose remains elevated for prolonged periods, that excess sugar deposits and damages small blood vessels throughout the body. The renal glomeruli are extremely vulnerable. When those capillaries are compromised, filtration fails. Proteins begin leaking into the urine, a serious clinical sign called proteinuria. The kidney progressively loses function. This process has a name: diabetic nephropathy. It is the #1 cause of chronic renal failure in the developed world. The third villain has the appearance of a solution: anti-inflammatory drugs. Ibuprofen, diclofenac, naproxen. Sold over the counter, consumed without guilt. The kidneys depend on substances called prostaglandins to regulate internal blood flow. Anti-inflammatories block exactly those substances. Renal blood flow drops. Filtration is compromised. With frequent use, the damage can be permanent. I watched this happen. A 53-year-old patient, an office manager from Chicago, who took ibuprofen nearly every week for chronic migraines. When she came to my office, her kidneys were already functioning below 50%. She had never been warned about the risk. Nobody ever told her that her headache pill was quietly destroying her kidneys. The fourth element of this equation is the most basic and the most neglected: water. The kidneys need water to filter. There is no other way to say it. When water intake is chronically insufficient, urine becomes concentrated, waste accumulates in the renal tubules, and the osmotic pressure inside the kidney increases. Over time, this promotes kidney stones, recurrent urinary tract infections, and progressive tubular microlesions that gradually compromise filtration function. Most American adults do not drink adequate water. Many replace it with coffee, soda, industrialized juice, energy drinks. These beverages do not hydrate the kidneys the same way plain water does. And some, particularly cola-based sodas, contain phosphoric acid, which studies have consistently associated with increased risk of chronic kidney disease with prolonged habitual consumption. And this is where everything connects in a way that deeply concerns me as a physician. An average person, in the average routine of modern American life, may be doing all of this simultaneously without realizing it. They wake up, drink coffee with sugar, and eat processed white bread. They have lunch with excess salt, seasoned with canned broth. At the office, they drink a soda. At the end of the day, they feel a headache coming and take ibuprofen. They drink less than a liter of water all day. And they repeat this, not for a week, not for a month, but for years, for decades, with no alarm ever going off. The signs that appear when the damage is already advanced are frequently confused with other conditions. Swelling in the legs and ankles by the end of the day, the kidney can no longer eliminate excess fluid. Extreme fatigue, disproportionate to the effort. The anemia of renal failure has already begun. Persistent, foamy urine. Proteins leaking where they should not be. Blood pressure that is difficult to control even with medication. Trouble concentrating. Poor sleep. Skin with an unusual tint. Do any of those signs sound familiar? I'm not saying everyone who feels tired has kidney disease. I'm saying that anyone who has these signs combined with the risk habits I just described needs to get tested. simple, affordable, accessible tests: serum creatinine, blood urea nitrogen, and the estimated glomerular filtration rate. Those 3 tests can, literally, save a life. Chronic kidney disease has 5 stages. In the first 3, with renal function still preserved above 30%, it is possible to slow the progression, preserve what remains, and in many cases, completely stabilize the loss of function. The kidney has a limited but real capacity for recovery, especially when the aggressions are removed in time. The first necessary change is a drastic reduction in sodium. Read the labels. The worst sodium doesn't come from the salt shaker. It comes from the package. Foods with more than 600 milligrams of sodium per serving are high risk for the kidneys when consumed frequently. Deli meats, ultra-processed foods, fast food, these are not just enemies of the heart. They are direct enemies of your kidneys. The second change is controlling sugar. This does not mean eliminating carbohydrates from your life. It means reducing added sugar, switching sodas for water, choosing whole fruits over industrialized juices, and opting for whole grains instead of refined ones. And if you have a family history of diabetes, or if you are overweight, get your glycated hemoglobin tested. Find out where your glucose levels stand right now. Do not postpone it. The third change is rethinking your relationship with anti-inflammatories. Occasional use, without specific contraindications, is not the problem. The problem is taking them 2 to 3 times a week after week, for years. If you have chronic pain that demands that pattern of use, you need a medical evaluation to treat the cause, not just mask the symptom with a drug that is damaging your kidneys in parallel. The fourth change is the simplest and most neglected. Drink water. The target for a healthy adult is 2 to 2.5 liters per day, varying with body weight, climate, and physical activity. Not coffee, not industrialized juice, not sweetened tea. Water. If you need a strategy, carry a bottle and set refill reminders. It is simple, but it makes a documented, measurable physiological difference. And finally, the change that ties all the others together. Get tested. If you are over 40 years old, if you have high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, a family history of kidney disease, or if you recognize the habits I described throughout this video, schedule an appointment. Ask for serum creatinine and estimated glomerular filtration rate. That single number can be the dividing line between a timely lifestyle change and a life connected to a dialysis machine 3 times a week. I spent years learning how to communicate this with the urgency it deserves, without falling into empty alarmism. Because alarmism without information saves nobody. It only terrifies. What saves lives is understanding the mechanism, recognizing that the poison is not hidden in some mysterious place. It is in the package you open every morning. It is in the pill you take without thinking. It is in the glass of water you didn't drink because you chose something else. The worst poison for the kidneys does not have a single name. It is a combination of common habits, normalized, invisible in daily routine, excess sodium, chronic sugar, frequently misused medications, and persistent dehydration. Together, they create a continuous renal overload that, over years, leads to the silent collapse of kidney function. And the tragedy is not that it is impossible to avoid. The tragedy is that it is completely avoidable. When you know what is happening, in time, you, watching this right now, have information that most people around you do not have. You have the opportunity to change the course before the damage becomes irreversible. That has real, concrete value, measurable in years of healthy life and preserved quality of life. In the next videos on this channel, I will continue breaking down the mechanisms that silently compromise the health of organs that rarely come up in everyday conversation, until it is too late. I will show you which foods have documented protective effects on the kidneys, how to read and interpret your own renal test results, and the exact questions to ask your doctor at your next appointment to make sure your kidney function is being properly monitored. If this video reached you, it wasn't by accident. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. A family member with diabetes or high blood pressure, a friend who takes anti-inflammatories every week without knowing the real risk, someone you know is neglecting their health without realizing what is quietly at stake. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. Every video we publish here is one more piece of this larger puzzle, the health nobody taught you to protect before it became necessary to defend. Your kidneys are working right now, in silence, as always. The question is, will you protect them before that silence becomes irreversible?